Greetings and welcome to Hidden Scriptural Truths Revealed. This video deals with the obelisks, also called sun pillars and asteroid poles. Originally, the obelisk was associated with sun worship, a symbol of Baal. To the pagans, the sun gave life to plants and to man, so they looked upon it as a god, a great life giver. It also had sexual significance, the male penis being the organ of reproduction, and it needed to be upright, erect, indicating virility. It is referred to in the Bible by the word images, and this is translated from several Hebrew words: matzabah, meaning standing images, in several places. 1 Kings chapter 14 verse 23, Jeremiah chapter 43 verse 13, Micah chapter 5 verse 13. Another word is hamanim, meaning sun images. In Isaiah chapter 27 verse 9, where it states, "They shall not stand up." YHVH hates them and continually instructs that they must be destroyed. Exodus chapter 23 verse 24, Exodus chapter 34 verse 13, Leviticus chapter 26 verse 1, Deuteronomy chapter 16 verse 22, Jeremiah 23 verse 13, to name just a few. In Judges 6, 1 to 40, and chapter 7, a great story of how Gideon saved Israel from the Midianites by his obedience to YHVH, by throwing down the obelisks that his father had in verse 23. It will be clear from this video that Christianity, led by the hired hands, leaders have ignored the instructions given in the scriptures by Heavenly Father YHVH, and they just carry on erecting these obelisks all over the Christian world, in prominent places, in churchyards, at the entrances to churches, in cemeteries, and as memorials to historical things that have happened. Here is a typical response from www.catholic.com. The obelisk does not signify pagan worship, although it undoubtedly has a pagan origin. This is to justify the obelisk in front of St. Peter's in Rome. The Vatican and St. Peter's Square stand on the exact site of the circus of Gaius and Nero, where the early believers were martyred. Caligula, the Roman emperor, bought this obelisk from Heliopolis, Egypt, in 36 BC, and had it erected in the center of the circus, and later the early believers were killed around it. The incredible story of its erection follows. It is a red granite obelisk, 132 feet high, with its foundation, and weighs 320 tons. In 1586, Pope Sixtus V ordered it to be moved and centered in St. Peter's Square. In those days, due to the difficult task, many movers refused to attempt the feat, since the Pope attached the death penalty if it was dropped or broken. On the 10th of September 1586, after a near failure, Domenico Fontana, with 45 winches, 160 horses, and a crew of 800 men, erected it. While it was being moved, the crowd, upon penalty of death, was to remain silent. The erection was celebrated with the roar of cannons, hundreds of bells ringing, and loud cheers of the multitude. An Egyptian idol was dedicated to the cross, and one was mounted on its top. It seems that by adding a cross at the top makes it right. Can we take a bag of heroin, make the sign of the cross over it, and bless it to make it right? This is a blasphemous veneration of something hated by the Heavenly Father, and shows that Christianity just shows YHVH the middle finger. Out of 28 original obelisks in the world, 15 are in Rome. Babylon the Great. The Washington Monument, in the shape of an obelisk, is the tallest in the world. But they say it is not a true obelisk because it was not made out of one single stone. Like the question, when is a door not a door? Answer, when it is a jam. Strange measurements. Each side is 660 inches and its height is 6660 inches. South Africa can boast of having an original obelisk that came out of Egypt, and it is covered in crosses and sun symbols carved into it. It is called the Prince of Wales Obelisk and stands next to the Brooks Pavilion in Port Elizabeth. Naturally, there are many others in South Africa, but they are not originals. The reason why YHVH hates them is because of the human sacrifices carried out by priests of Baal that they testify to. The idolatrous Baal priests were also called Kemarims. That comes from Kamar, to be black. They wore black robes to hide the blood from the sacrifices. Zephaniah chapter 1 verse 4. The same clerical clothing worn by Christian ministers today is black. Has this been inherited? The best pictures are of the Nabatean Mount of Obelisks and the sacrificial altar for animal and human sacrifices. They worshipped Baal Samin, from Aramaic meaning Lord of the Heavens. The people of Petra learnt the following frightful human sacrifice from the Canaanites. Ancient hieroglyphics that have been translated tell the following account of a typical sacrifice. 1. It was decided by the priests of Baal in that particular area that Baal required a sacrifice. 2. The sacrifice required a young virgin girl. After deliberation, the unfortunate family of the girl was finally selected. 3. As the afternoon drew to a close, the priests of Baal put on their black robes. The reason for this already explained. 4. The priests arrive at the dwelling and the family start to weep and cry out, realizing from the time of day the black robes of the priests are wearing and the fact that they have an eligible daughter, that a terrible, cruel time of suffering and fear awaits their child. 5. The priests excuse the wailing, saying the family are overcome with joy for the honor that this has brought to their family. 6. Through the night, this little girl, once a virgin, is sexually used by these priests of Baal, taking turns in this molestation. 7. Then, in the early pre-dawn, she is tied to the altar, and as the first rays of the sun fall upon the altar, a sacrificial dagger is plunged into her chest, and her heart is torn out. 8. Next to the altar is a hollowed out rock with the rays of the sun marked around the rim. With a hole in the bottom, this is mounted upon a rock pedestal that has a groove carved around it, leading to the ground. The torn out heart, still filled with blood, is placed into this hollowed out rock. The blood runs through the hole and follows the grooved pedestal into the earth. Remember, Baal is a sun deity and is associated with human fertility and as well as fertility for the crops. This sacrifice caters for both these needs. 9. The body of this little girl is then eaten by the priests of Baal. The Petra description of a long bench on which the sacrifice was prepared as a burnt offering, one can assume that she was not eaten raw. 10. Wherever such a sacrifice was performed, there stands an obelisk to mark the place. The priests of Baal copied and distorted Numbers chapter 18 verse 10, where the meat offerings were to be eaten, and as a result they became devourers of human flesh. In 2 Kings 11, chapter 11 verse 18, we read about Matan, a priest of Baal. And in the Hebrew text, this word priest is written KHN, Strong's number 3547. With correct vowel pointing, the translation is Matan, a kahana of Baal, priest of Baal. It appears that the Afrikaans language has it correct, because their word for cannibal is kannibal. Phonetically the link is obvious, Aramaic kana-bal. Something to consider. 1500 BC, King Solomon and Hiram I, king of Tyre, had huge fleets of ships called ships of Tarshish, and it is a historical and archaeological fact that they sailed the world. North and South America, Central America, West Indies, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, and the islands of the Pacific. Their crews were made up of Phoenicians, Thracians, Sicilians, who were known for cannibalism, and other also influenced other warlike nations of the Mediterranean. Obviously, countries bordering Israel were also influenced. Baal worship and its sacrifices were well established. Petra and the Nabateans were dated as 600 BC, and their Baal sacrifices, and the Aztecs, dated 1300 to 1521 AD, also plunged a sacrificial dagger into the human sacrifice and tore out the heart. The first account of cannibalism happened in 1772, when the Maori were encountered in the Bay of Islands, New Zealand. Could the eating of human flesh have been introduced by crews of the ships of Tarshish over 1,000 years before? We plan to do a video, 1, Noah's Ark in detail, and 2, the voyages and destinations of the ships of Tarshish. Shalom.